Come read with me. I'm reading my book, Six of One, Half a Dozen of the Other, and we're in chapter 2. I'm on my way to this for my first date and we're going to the snow. Modesty, that's the title of chapter 2. Mama created a lifestyle in our home that was driven by her strict religious beliefs. We did not cuss, drink, smoke, chew, or take drugs. There was never a bottle of cooking wine in our house. If a recipe called for wine, Mama used vinegar. We did not dance because it was considered by her a foreplay for sex. She may not have been too far wrong on that one, especially considering the dance styles of today. We did not bowl because beer was served in the lounge at the bowling alley. Alcohol was forbidden in any form or contact. We did not go to the movies because she considered them evil. We did not utilize skating rinks because music was played while skating was being done. That was considered dancing. And dancing was forbidden. Many of our friends and even church friends skated. We never learned to swim because swimming was considered mixed bathing when both sexes were in the water. Winter formals or senior proms were out of the question because we were not allowed to dance. Proms and formals had dancing. Mama wasn't concerned about preparing us for social life. We learned very little of the social graces. We girls were required to wear our hair long. Our hair was seldom cut, except to trim our perpetually fast-growing bangs. We wore our dresses below our knees and were expected to conduct ourselves like ladies at all times. We did not wear pants or jeans because they were considered to be men's apparel, and of course the scripture had something to say about that too. The boys were never allowed to be seen without their shirts, as modesty was foremost, and none of us, boys or girls, wore shorts. Though there were 12 children in our family, we never saw each other unclothed, not even partially. We did not wear makeup or dye our hair. Our religious upbringing was primarily a doctrine of do-nots. The absence of makeup didn't create too much difficulty for me, but the clothing issue was another matter altogether. After all, there are times when the need for modesty should outweigh even the staunchest of rules. Dresses are nice to look at, and they do give one a certain aura of femininity, but they are not suitable for every situation. For instance, my dilemma in going to the snow was twofold: how to stay warm, since my clothes, or dresses, were designed for Fresno's warmer climate. They were too lightweight to afford me any warmth. And how was I to maintain my modesty in a dress, yet still participate in the snow games? The problem with the games was a simple one. I decided I would simply decline and be content to sit by and watch the others enjoy themselves. I was good at that. I had a lot of practice in that sort of thing because there were numerous school activities throughout the years that were against our religion. Sitting on the sidelines watching when an activity was forbidden was an integral part of my life. Whenever any questionable activity was being presented at school, we would be required to take a note to the school asking that we be excused from the activity for, quote, religious reasons. We were sort of conscientious objectors to all the fun activities. Keeping warm in the snow and remaining within the guidelines of Mama's form of modesty, on the other hand, was a nearly impossible task. For a person with not an ounce of fat, it was a serious consideration. At 5'7" and barely 100 pounds, I really was rather bony. My thin cotton dresses would be completely useless when it came to keeping warm. So I had a real dilemma to overcome. Since wearing pants was not allowed, even under my knee-length dresses, this presented a major challenge. Dolores tried to save me by suggesting that I simply change into a pair of pants that she would provide for me after we left the house. but I believed in honesty and obedience. It seemed to me to be dishonest, so I declined her suggestion. I am sure her heart must have gone out to me in my impossible situation. After all, she had lived it before me. Surely, there must be a way to solve the problem and still remain within the strict religious guidelines. My family were problem solvers and do-it-yourselfers. I gave it some thought and soon found that I was indeed up to the challenge. I could do this. First, I put the resources that were available at hand to work for me. I did not own a pair of gloves, and I knew I would need to keep my hands warm. My first challenge was to solve that problem. I found an old brown woolen blanket and proceeded to cut it up to make mittens for myself, and, as a goodwill gesture, I made a pair for Dell, too. I had never owned a pair of mittens, so I had nothing to compare to for a pattern. I did the best I knew how. I laid my hand on the blanket and traced around my hand, ensuring that there was room enough to spread my fingers. Then I cut the blanket slightly around and extended the fabric to make a covering for my wrist. I made a similar pattern for Dell's mittens, guessing at what size his hands might be. I cut double layers and blanket stitched all around the edges with yarn. The mittens I made were rather crude, but they just might work. With the hand warming problem out of the way, I now faced the greater challenge. I needed to figure out a way to keep my legs warm. The creation of pantyhose in 1959 changed the fashion industry, but they did not become mainstream until after 1964. Pantyhose had not reached our household in 1966. Garter belts were not only fashionable, they were a necessity if a lady desired to hold up her nylon stockings which only reached mid-thigh. I had an inspiration of what I thought at the time to be a brilliant idea. My plan was that I would find all the available stockings in the house, new, used, discarded, and defunct. With so many girls having lived in the house, there should be a few stockings with runners lying around still. By putting them on one pair over the other, I might be able to obtain some degree of warmth and still not be in opposition to the strict dress restrictions. I had not tried out this technique ahead of time, so I was without experience as to how well it would work. But being a problem solver by nature, I confidently assumed my idea would work. I would need a total of 6 or 7 pairs of nylon hose, all neatly fastened mid-thigh to the garter straps. At least, that is how it's supposed to work. Since my knee-length plaid wool skirt would offer me plenty of cover, it would be my secret. Having the proper shoes was another difficulty I faced when considering the snow. Regular low-cut street shoes like I owned would provide neither warmth nor protection from the cold, moist snow. The year was 1966, and the fashion rage, made popular by entertainers and rock groups, was mini skirts, long straight hair, heavy eye makeup, and knee-length white patent leather, not gloves, go-go boots. Remember the song, "These Boots Are Made for Walking" by Nancy Sinatra? Yeah, those boots. Dolores had seen some of those white patent leather vinyl boots on sale for $7. So I used my babysitting money to buy myself a pair. They were almost paper thin, with a zipper on the side of the calf. They had 1/4 inch thick, slick leather soles that would prove to provide absolutely no traction in a slippery situation. They would also provide very little warmth, but it was the best I could do under the circumstances. Even if I had the money to spend, there wasn't an abundance of very cold weather clothing in Fresno. There was no need for it. When the following Saturday rolled around, I was, I thought, prepared. I put on the numerous pairs of nylons, having more than a little difficulty getting them secured to the rubber and metal fasteners of the garter belt. Each time, I succeeded in sliding the metal loops over the rubber node and the many layers of nylons It would slowly slide back down and pop loose, releasing the excessive slippery bulk. Finally, after many tries, I managed to secure them enough so that if I walked very delicately and did not move around too much, they just might hold. I put on my warmest, quote, clothes, the go-go boots, a white blouse, a black sweater, my red and black tartan plaid skirt, and a fleece-lined white vinyl car coat that had belonged to Fonda a year or two earlier. It at least had a hood and would provide some degree of warmth. I put the handmade mittens into the coat pocket. I must have been quite a sight the day of the snow trip, but when Dell saw me, he was very gracious. He accepted the somewhat crude handmade mittens with not so much as a smirk, putting them into his coat pocket. More than likely, Dolores had forewarned him about my strict upbringing and my refusal to stray from the straight and narrow path. He probably expected the worst, especially concerning my mode of dress. I am sure if he did, he was not disappointed. Dell led me outside, and we all piled into Dee's brown Ford station wagon. On top of the car were tied two black, overinflated inner tubes for playing in the snow. Dee and Tom sat in the front. Dell's sister and her husband sat in the middle seat. Dell and I, because we were the youngest, rode in the very back. The way back rear seat where we sat faced the back window of the vehicle. It caused us to get a seasick feeling as we watched the road moving away from us. It was especially hard to fight the dizzy feeling as we made our way up the winding mountain roads. We endured it as best we could as we shyly got to know each other, stealing sideways glances at one another occasionally. We did not talk much. We mostly listened to the music on the car radio and picked up snatches of the conversations of the others. I was thinking about how good-looking Dell was and feeling fortunate that he was even interested in me. I hoped that he would not find me peculiar. Dell, at 6'1", was broad-shouldered with huge biceps and large working man's hands. I had, as most young girls do, imagined what sort of man I would someday like to marry. He fit the image perfectly. He had a square jaw and thin lips and a high forehead. He was large but not overweight. His complexion was deeply tanned from spending many hours working and playing in the sun. He had solid size 12 feet for a sure foundation. His hair was dark brown and slightly curly. His deep-set denim blue eyes showed kindness, strength of character, and a hint of laughter. He seemed very mature for his 20 years. He was quiet and confident and not boisterous and loud like so many other young men. I felt secure with him from the very first moment. When we arrived an hour or so later at the snow line, Dee and the other adults in the car began looking for a suitable turnout with a good hill nearby for inner tubing and tobogganing. It would require a hill that was not too steep, with no large trees to block the path of the inner tubes, because the Sierras are filled with large pine, cedar, fir, and redwood trees. It was no easy task to find the right spot. When a suitable place was finally located, Dell got busy right away building a small campfire to warm ourselves by. The snow was fresh, powdery, and soft, so it was easy to make a nice tobogganing trail. As long as I remained safely by the warmth of the fire, I was free from having to deal with my inadequate clothing. The others took turns sliding down the hill on the inner tubes. They climbed back up to the top of the hill and then did it again and again. I was limited on my movements because of the slick soles of my boots, as well as the leg warming problem.